What to do about the falling standard of education in the country? So many statements coming through from different quarters. I mean, this morning you heard that of something to be done about bureaucracies and universities, this overhaul. What kind should that be? So perhaps we'll consider that and a lot more this morning. And we're joined by Professor Ngozi Osarenmen, who is a former Commissioner of Education and Professor of Counseling Consulting. Psychology. Okay, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this headline we see this morning, government wants to overhaul the university system, and then there was a committee which they set up some time ago to do so many things about education, and we wonder what exactly, what should they be doing? Because some of these announcements we hear every now and then, and at the end of the day, people don't get to see the desired results. How should we approach this challenge?
How should we approach the challenge? First and foremost, what government is doing presently is needs assessment of all the federal universities and state universities. NUC is doing that. Colleagues are out, going from one university to the other. What are the needs? What do we have on ground? What is the gap, the missing gap? What are we supposed to have vis-a-vis what we have? So that is what they're doing. And how are we supposed to approach this? You know, I'm one of those people that strongly believe that whatever we have to do, we have to be very honest about it. Very honest in the sense that are we ready to invest in education? Watch my words. Invest in education, not fund education.
Two different things.
Two different things. Funding education, we have budgeted 10 billion for education. And that 10 billion, about 8.5 is personnel costs.
How does that happen, that 8.5 billion of a budget of about
we are giving examples here.
Yes.
Because the people who are in education will be paid. Their running costs to be met. But beyond that, what about materials for those people you are paying salaries to work with?
No, it's interesting that you give that kind of example because, you know, you've also been a commissioner for education. So
yes.
Has that been your experience? That it seems that so much money is budgeted for education, but more than half the money has gone on personnel costs?
Because there are people that have to be paid. You are working here. By the time we calculate the salaries of all the people working in channels, you will see that when you place it against the facilities you need to work, there will be a lopsidedness in favor of your salary. But what we are trying to say, or what I'm trying to say when I talk about investment, yes, you are paying me salary, which I deserve. I have to earn it. Have you provided what I need? Or are you ready to provide what I need to be able to teach? The people I'm going to teach, are they motivated enough to receive what I'm going to teach? Do I have the learning materials, the teaching materials that will make my work meaningful? That is what I mean by investing in education. When was the last time our teachers had proper refresher course? When was the last time the standard teacher, the average teacher, improved on the previous knowledge he or she had after graduation.
But whatever happened to inspectors? Once upon a time, we had inspectors coming to school
we have
to
inspectors.
check all the teaching aids and as well assess the teaching capabilities of the teachers.
The situation is quite pathetic because when it suits people, they use highfalutin language to describe whatever that is happening. We have inspectors, but those inspectors, do they have what they need to do inspection? Number one, we have explosion of population. In the 70s, in the 80s, and even in the early 90s, most schools, total population of most schools, maybe 200, 300, 500. And maybe because we want education to get to the very basic level and to everybody, we have set up, in quote, schools. So there are more schools to be inspected, and the people that are going to do the inspection have not increased. And I'm telling you that there are many inspectors who have been trained in the art of inspecting. I mean, we are talking of quality assurance here. They don't have vehicles. You are a chief inspector in a local government with about 62 schools, and you don't have a vehicle. Even if you decide to trek to each of those schools every day, you won't cover those 62 schools in a term. That is what I'm talking about. We have to invest in education.
Taking a look at the 2012 budget, were you impressed with the figure you saw there? About 400.15 billion naira was budgeted by the federal government for education, and that excludes Universal Basic Education Commission. It also excludes the Petroleum Technology Development Trust Fund and the Education Trust Fund.
Tertiary Education Trust Fund. Am I impressed? For me, it's not the amount that is budgeted.
But that should play an integral part, because if you're saying...
Sweethearts, listen. If you budget, like you said, 400 and something billion, and at the end of the year, it's only about 200 that is released. Budget what is realistic. Budget what you know, because budget is paper money. The physical cash is not there. It's paper money. You have 400 and point something billion on paper. At the end of the year, have you bothered to go back to check the performance of the budget? It's not allocation that is the issue for me. You can allocate anything, but it's the release of that allocation. If you say that you are giving me 10 naira this month, and at the end of the month I was able to get only 1 naira. When you gave me, allocated 10 naira to me, everybody applauded. Maokbe is such a generous young lady. She's going to give this woman 10 naira every month. That is wonderful. But at the end of the month, the people that heard when you said you will give me 10 naira would not know that a lot of other factors came in, and you were able to give me maybe 1 naira or 2 naira. And if I had budgeted to spend 10 naira, and there are heads for that 10 naira, and I'm able to get only 1 naira, what do you think will happen? A lot of other issues that are supposed to be treated dispassionately will suffer.
Well, Professor, this just doesn't seem the case in all the schools in Nigeria, but particularly people are asking,
in all the schools,
I'm coming, why is it that we are seeing some kind of relative good or calmness or improvement with some private schools, as against what we saw in public schools?
Private schools, if you've done an analysis of private schools, the fees are quite steep. They pay steep fees. And if I have paid so much for my child to be in your school, you better give my child what I have paid for. Which is not the same case in the public schools.
But that shouldn't be the case.
In the public schools, there's no principal that has direct access to the funding process like in the private school. Most times the private schools, the principal most times is the owner of the school. If he or she is not the owner of the school, but these are the things I want and these are the things that will be provided. But you know, in the case of the public school, there are, I don't want to use the word that is coming to mind. There are barriers you must cross to get to the final destination of accessing
but
that money.
That's not the case in other places. For instance, in the United States, we have if you choose to go to private school, well, so be it, because you have to pay the money. But in the public schools where it is so free, the way it is in Nigeria, but we have a better school there.
Last year in March, I was part of a team that went from all over Africa, all developing countries, because we were about 22 countries in World Bank Institute. And we visited a junior high school. And at the end of our tour, we had a discussion with the principal of that school. And the question, we were 4 from Nigeria. The question those of us from Nigeria asked, what is your budget? The budget is so low, they have cut the budget, I can't even operate the way I want. How much is your budget? $150 million. $150 million, and is paid directly into the school account for you to run the school. $150 million, most states in Nigeria, I'm talking of states, don't have that for the Ministry of Education.
So,
this is a junior high school.
What we're seeing here is it's a very dicey situation. It's also pretty complex. First of all, you talk about how so much money seems to be budgeted in some scenarios, and then there is a
the money budgeted, so much money budgeted is personnel costs.
Okay. But
personnel, you have to pay salaries.
Okay, but it also seems that accessing that money is a very big challenge. What are some of the barriers?
We don't have problems accessing salaries.
Well, you have problems accessing money is meant for capital expenditure,
which is very minimal, you say.
Yes.
So whatever little is left for capital expenditure is also very difficult to get.
You know, how do I explain this? You know, salaries are, it must happen. Capital expenditure, you have to first of all do the whole hog, and you know, this due process also has to take place. That is why most times you can't start a capital project in a budget year and finish it. And in the next budget year, you have to include the balance. And if you don't, that is the reason why we have cases of abandoned projects.
That brings to the question our budgeting system. Because there are some who have advocated, why don't we have a 3-year budget system where funds allocated to a particular sector is always there. Because, I mean, cases of abandoned projects, it happens almost in every sector.
The funds won't always be there because the fluctuations of the oil market, the fluctuation also of the dollar, and we don't have such raw cash to be kept somewhere. Yes, some of the developing partners have helped. I'm talking of education now, particularly at the post-primary and primary level. They have helped us to develop 3-year sectoral budget plan. In 3 years, we'll do this year, we'll do this year, we'll do this next year. Most ministries of education in the country have that. But, my dear, it is big.
You know, one of the things you also mentioned, a major challenge you mentioned was population explosion.
Our children have to go to school.
Definitely they do.
And we are having more children.
What do we do?
We will keep having more.
We won't kill our children. It's God that gives children, and if God gives you a child, you must give birth to it. We say.
How do we go beyond this fact that it's always merely on paper, most of these budget provisions? Because
that is why we talk about political will. Political will to be able to do that which is right. Political will to ignore all the distractions that will make you... You see, if you don't fund and invest in education, you are even undoing yourself. You know, some people now have this craze of sending their children outside the country. And when they finish, they'll come back here. And you have created a hydra-headed monster. That child who has been out of school because of lack of investment in the school system and lack of investment in education is a relation of your US, UK, Ghana trained child, whether you like it or not.
And most of them are expected to come back and head the same ill-equipped, or not properly educated workforce.
Many of them come back and they have difficulties coping. And you know, parents also, because some parents have acquired so much. Your child comes back, you give him or her an apartment, not in Surulere, for those of you in Lagos. You buy a brand new car of maybe 2, 3, 4 million naira for that child. So what are motivating that child to try to excel?
The car.
The car. You should work to save to buy a car.
So we have so many things militating against our progress. There's the issue of the fact that we don't get...
And we are the people.
And then our value system.
That is what I'm saying. We are the ones. You know, we try to live our fantasies through our children. When I was going to school, I didn't have a car. My child must have a car. It's unheard of that my child will not have a car. You hear some people say.
But is it a crime
Is
for a child
it
to have
the
a car?
car that is going to school, or is it the child that is going to school?
Well, it's not a
Well,
crime for a child to have a car.
Some of those
In school?
yes, some
in
of them
school,
do better than those
in
who don't even have a
university.
car.
Very few. Very few. Even when they want to do well, their friends will influence them. We have to go out. That is just an aside.
One other area, what about the students you turn out from your education department? Is it Faculty of Education?
Faculty.
Are they being taught in the process of becoming better teachers, for instance, for those who would want to go in that line?
I'm happy you say for those who want to go into that line. You know, the sad commentary for most faculties of education in the country is that you and I will not encourage our children to go and study education. And the students we get are what some of us call the rejects. Those that didn't make their cutoff in law, in biz admin, in mass comm, in engineering. Those are the ones that change and come to education. And when they come to education, you know, in education, we teach you the teaching methods, and the cooperating departments, like in science and in arts, will teach you the content. Assuming you are going to teach English, you are doing education English, you are doing education history, they will teach you that. Most of the students, majority of them, prefer to hang around Faculty of Arts and Faculty of Science, ignoring their home and their base faculties. That is why some of us say, if a candidate had entered education as a first choice, and that candidate has scored the minimum mark, pass mark, that is the person that has showed indicated an initial interest. That is the person you should admit to help and sustain that initial interest. Because most times, by the time they graduate, the only experience of teaching for life some of them have is the compulsory teaching practice they have to do. Because if you're in the Faculty of Education, you must do teaching practice for 12 weeks.
It's not possible to counsel those in that line or who have already found themselves there to boost their confidence that this could not be about
majority of them are not interested, and by the time you finish wasting your energy, wasting finance, wasting a lot of money in subsidizing their stay in Faculty of Education, they finish, they are taken to the banks, they are taken to oil companies, they are taken to telecom companies, they just leave. And we are now saddled with people who are not well trained because the school must go on. But the ones we have spent time to train don't want to go back to teach. They just want a degree. Wow. And because we have made them realize that once you have a degree and you make a 2-1, you are sellable anywhere. They take a long walk.
Well, interesting perspectives, but I'm afraid we're really out of time, and there's so many perspectives really that we couldn't even touch today. So perhaps we'll have to continue this some other time. But if we're able to identify the fact that, look, investment in education as opposed to just funding is different.
Investment, you must invest in your teachers, because your teachers must be motivated. They must have the resources, the materials to teach. You have to provide a conducive learning environment. The students themselves they are going to teach would also be motivated. It's a holistic thing. You can't pay me salary and not give me what to work with. You can't bring students who are not ready to learn to school.